Welcome to our May Day rally. I think you can all congratulate yourselves in having been a little bit naughty. In fact, I think as we went through town, there were one or two people who thought we were all being a bit of a nuisance. And you may be aware that under the new legislation that we're protesting against, that could become a criminal offence that could land you in prison. And let's be clear, there are some people who are taking offence because we were saying kill the bill. And some people seem to like to interpret that as if it's some kind of incitement of violence against someone called William or something like that. And it's not what we're about. The Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill does not easily fit into a chant or on a placard. But we all know what we're here for and what we're about. So welcome to our May Day rally. And what better way, I'm sorry it's raining out there for you, I'm under the covers. What better way to celebrate International Workers' Day, which is a traditional day of protest, what better way to do that than to protest injustice? We're here to protest against the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, which from here on after people are going to refer to as the bill because it's a bit of a mouthful. It's the most extreme and serious threat to our movement seen for generations. My name is Keith Crane. I'm an activist within the PCS Civil Service Union, and I'm a founder member, one of the founder members of Eastbourne Stand Up to Racism, one of 10 local organisations who have come together to organise this event. Now this situation we're in is an emergency. We have a Prime Minister riding high apparently in the polls who would prefer to see bodies piling up in their thousands than to interfere with his mate's profits. We've got a Prime Minister who accepts tens of thousands of pounds in gifts or bribes in a dodgy deal to do up his flat. Most importantly, we have a Prime Minister, together with the Home Secretary Priti Patel, who wants to extinguish our right to protest. This legislation means organising a protest like ours today could land you in prison. The bill gives powers to the police to impose any restrictions they see fit on any protests, even one-person protests, for instance, to prevent noise. They're scared of noise. The establishment think we're going to bring them down with a little bit of noise. Well, you've got your whistles. I know it's raining. Come on, Eastbourne, let's make some noise. Let's be heard. This bill threatens severe sentences for non-compliance with any police restrictions, even if the police have failed to communicate the restrictions to the demonstration organisers. So you go to prison and you won't know beforehand what it is you're doing wrong. Those attending protests could also find themselves in prison for unintentionally risking the possibility of causing a nuisance to someone unknown. You don't have to actually cause a nuisance. You don't have to intend to cause a nuisance. Your behaviour just needs to risk the possibility of unintentionally causing a nuisance.
Doesn't that describe Boris Johnson?
Does that describe Boris Johnson, someone says. It gives power to police to confiscate vehicles, effectively criminalising the Roma, Gypsy and Traveller people. And it extends racist police stop and search powers, allowing the police to continually harass people without grounds for suspicion. We know that stop and search is used disproportionately against young black men. So seriously, this legislation would move us into similar territory that you see in a place like Putin's Russia, where protests are legal, but frequently they're made illegal. They're not allowed. And protest organisers go to prison. The legality around protest is a facade, and we're moving into that territory. Our prisons could end up being stuffed full of prisoners of conscience who've done nothing other than peacefully protest. It's the Tories' authoritarian response to the Black Lives Matter movement and to Extinction Rebellion. Instead of addressing the climate and environmental emergency or recognising the need to confront endemic racism, they want to outlaw the protests that forced these issues into public discourse. In response, a movement has emerged uniting broad layers around the slogan "Kill the Bill." This has the potential to be the biggest protest movement since the poll tax rebellion ended Margaret Thatcher's political career, along with the poll tax itself. That is something we need to learn from history and follow those lessons and do it again. So we need to see off this bill. We need to defy the bill if it becomes law. The only thing that can stop this bill is serious protest. We have to see this as an increasingly authoritarian government tooling up, ready to suppress the protest they know is coming because they know their policies will provoke resistance. So we need to be ready to keep on protesting until this bill is killed off. And we have this afternoon an impressive and varied array of speakers. We've got poets, we've got musicians. I'm pretty sure the rain is only going to be a shower. It's not going to be hanging around for too long, and so it's worth staying around for the great array of speakers that we have. And I think, hopefully, our first speaker isn't too far away and knows who they are. I'm going to invite Dulcie Lee to come and give us a talk. We're in for a real treat. People have noticed the marvellous school student strikes, and here we have a terrific example. This protest is about defending the rights of people in the future, and here we have someone who is the future.
Hello, my name's Dulcie and I fight for climate justice. I've been striking from school and protesting since I was 6 years old. This is the first time I've spoken in front of a crowd. This is the first time I've spoken in front of a crowd. It's pretty scary to tell you, but sometimes it's good to do stuff that scares you. Someone called Greta inspired me to do this. I think she is very brave because she is not scared to speak out when something is wrong. Being able to speak out is very important. Without this, we will never be able to take on the huge challenges we are facing. We must protect this freedom at all costs. Thank you for being here today. And most importantly, thank you for choosing to protest.
Here we have Eastbourne's own Greta Thunberg and the future of protest and the future of ensuring we have democracy in our country. I don't know if Jake Lambert's around, if he's here yet. So I'll call forward Riley Hutchinson Lacey. Riley is a social science student at East Sussex College and has come forward, I think we met him on the street, and has come forward to help us organise this protest. So, Riley.
As part of the, is that loud enough? Or? Yeah, okay. As part of the LGBTQ community, I would not have the rights I do now without the unity of millions of people protesting, making noise and objecting. We were a disease, punishable by death in 1533, even still in 2019, a mental disorder until 1973. The Stonewall Uprising of 1969, one of the greatest rallies of our times, over 400 people fighting for their rights, a movement that went worldwide. And we are gathered here today because all this progress could be taken away. Article 9, freedom of thought, belief and religion. We have the right to put our thoughts and beliefs into action. Article 10, freedom of expression. We have the right to express our views without government obstruction. Article 11, freedom of assembly and association. We have the right to assemble, protest and demonstrate. These are all universal declarations. If we give the state more power, these are the first of our human rights they will devour. We are expected to lie down and leave it, but we need to stand up for what we believe in, for all the movements that have gained notoriety by not just accepting this as our society.
Thank you, Riley. It's proving to be a great local campaigner. I'm going to ask Tasmin to come forward now. We have a treat because we're not just having a load of speakers, which is speakers are good sometimes, hopefully all of us, but we're going to also have some spoken word poetry for your delight. Tasmin.
Hello everyone. It's been a little while since I've spoken to a mic, so bear with me. I've got a poem for you. It's called Lessons from My Grandmother, the Original Rebel. Just a bit about my grandma. She was born to a white British mother and to an Arabic Tunisian father, and when World War II broke out, she was living in Germany. She'd tell me stories of when the Nazis would march through the city and everyone had to go out into the streets and salute, and her little flipping the bird was to salute with the wrong arm. She was 8, 9 years old, and she was doing that on purpose. So I was very grateful to be guided through life with her moral compass, for sure. So this is called Lessons from My Grandmother, the Original Rebel. My grandmother taught me to leave things as I would wish to find them. Tidy my toys away by end of play, wash the dishes up by end of day. So that each new morning was a fresh canvas, a gift to yourself to enjoy. If we let this bill pass, what kind of tomorrow are we offering ourselves? Muzzled mornings and civil rights snatched by afternoon, rambler turned convict, traveller turned prisoner. Pop to the shop, get stopped and searched because, insert bigoted excuse for racist views here. Days with no voice, no choice, all at the mercy of authority, our pal pretty and the land hoarding wealthy. The beginning of the end of democracy. See, my grandmother taught me to leave things as I would wish to find them. Resolve arguments so they do not fester in your dreams. Pocket litter on your walk till it's full to the seams so that each new day is a happier place for others. If we let this bill pass, what kind of tomorrow are we offering our children? We want them to live in a world where they can breathe clean air, breathe without knees on their necks. We want our children to know rainforests and mangroves and coral reefs. We want them to see a world where success is not measured by the number of wars that have been won or the countries taken, but how we've come together as a nation. Where we celebrate history from every page and every mouth and from the volume suffocating underneath a whitewash. We want them to see a world where nomadic ways of life are better catered for, not outlawed. We want our children to build bridges between communities, not be forced to watch them burn down. We want our children to share this right to shout, as a non-disruptive protest is just a day out and social progression is no picnic in the park. It's the right to march, to turn our frustration and desperation into a war cry that shakes a new story onto the page. We will not rest until this bill is put to bed, tucked up neatly and buried in a box at the bottom of the garden because my grandmother taught me to leave things as you would wish to find them.
Thank you, Tasmin. That was very moving. And personally, I'm glad you mentioned clean air, but I won't say why. So, May Day protest, it's a tradition across the world. People are protesting always on May Day. And I think we're keeping the tradition alive But of course, we've got something very important to protest about this year. Shortly, we're going to have some music. I hope if Lackadaisy are around and they can say hello to me. But before we move on to some live music, we're going to have a very good speaker, an excellent local activist, trade union activist in Unite the Community, one of the founders of the Eastbourne People's Assembly, joined with us to help found Eastbourne Stand Up to Racism, and is going to now talk to you about the history of May Day and all of the stuff around that. Oh, here she is. I was looking at her. Carol Mills.
That's a bit high for me.
We'll go for this one then.
Oh, yeah. 1, 2. Yeah. This Eastbourne rally is just one of a number of similar rallies being held throughout our country, where communities and towns like ours have come together to defend our right to protest and to kill this bill. Our rally today is supported by local groups who have come together in solidarity, united in our outrage against this bill. Solidarity and protest is the pivotal strength of our movement. Unity is our strength. And I want to talk about unions and about May Day and about public outcry. Why do we have unions? Unions came about in the 18th century when workers came together to organise against poor paying conditions, and always running alongside workers organising were the repressive acts of the ruling classes. Unions grew anyway, and the repression along with it. And at times, martyrs were created. So we have the massacre at Peterloo, the Battle of Peterloo, and we have the suffragettes, and we have the Tolpuddle martyrs, where agricultural workers' rebellion in 1834 was crushed when 6 of their leaders were deported to Australia because they swore an oath to be a union, and that was against the law, and they were deported to Australia, and that crushed their rebellion. And their fight is now memorialised in a fantastic celebration down in Dorset, the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival, every year. Now, the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution and the deplorable conditions in factories, this saw the growth of the numbers of unions and of our strength. And so what the state had to do then, they had to find a way of imposing their dominion, and they did this by legalising them, not to help them, but to set limits and controls on what workers could and couldn't do. That sounds familiar. This bill is just the same old stuff being played out again, the same old story, keep those workers down. Now, trade unionism is not part of the school curriculum. So young people they're unschooled about unions, and that's the way the state wants it. But there are ways around it. My union goes into schools as extracurricular activity, and we teach unions to kids. So we get round it. But what do unions achieve? It's with the power of unions that we see workplace fights for better pay and conditions being won. You may remember the Wetherspoons, the McDonald's and the TJ Friday strikes of 2018. There was a whole series of coordinated strikes against poverty pay. Is it that? No, it's me. Go on, put it on. 1, 2, yeah. Now, one of the main organisers of those strikes, he wasn't long out of school, and he didn't know what a union was because he wasn't taught about unions. But he found a flyer lying around, and he Googled it. And from there, the young people that worked in those fast food outlets, they joined unions, they organised, they formed branches, they organised national strikes, and they won their fight for a living wage. And they also won their fight to have unions recognised in their workplace. Now, that win that those young people, not long out of school, that win was really uplifting for our movement. Now, these strikes were run by young people, as I say, who weren't taught about unions. But when they realised they had to fight for a better world, a better life for themselves, they found out about unions. So, if you're not in a union, please join a union. Now, I want to say that unions are really growing under COVID because the fight for safe conditions is being played out. And I want to tell you about the National Education Union. Now, they broke all records. They had the largest online political meeting in the UK ever. They had nearly 500,000. There was 400,000 people joined into their meeting when they were trying to arrange a safe return to school. And 700 of their members were on that meeting, in that meeting, and they got 600 new members overnight. So unions are growing because... what did I say? I always do that. 6,000 new members overnight. And they won because parents, children, and people like me and all the teachers stood in solidarity, and they won that fight, and the government had to do one of their U-turns. Now, there's power in solidarity, and there's power in our strength and standing together, and there's power in not being divided by our divide and rule overlords that they would like us to be. Bloody rain. Look at that. I just want to say a bit about May Day, just a bit. This, as Keith said, this is the most important day of the year for workers all over the world, and it's International Workers' Solidarity Day. And the day came into existence because they were fighting for an 8-hour working day, and that's how it happened. And all over the world, that tradition has been kept alive, and where May Day becomes a focal point for workers' demonstrations and fights, and sometimes those fights go beyond the law at different times of history. But what I'm saying is the true spirit of May Day is being kept alive by people like us here today, and it's not being commercialised and turned into a colourful tourist attraction and denuded of its power. You know, we're showing what May Day is about. But finally, a bit about public outcry. Now, we're only allowed to hold this gathering today after the illegal, spontaneous vigil that happened at Clapham after the death of Kate Everett, and the public outcry by the state repression that happened on that day. And so, all of a sudden, we're allowed to have legal protests again. But then comes the bill. And so what they want to do is make sure they pick and choose which legal protests they allow. So we don't know what's ahead of us. If public outcry and protests do not derail this bill, there may come a time when we need to protest beyond the law. And people say, oh, we can't do that. You know, but it was necessary at different times in our history. It was necessary for the poll tax riots and for suffragettes and the Peterloo massacre. It became necessary. And Martin Luther King, what he says about protests beyond the law is protest beyond the law is not a departure from democracy, it's an absolutely essential part of it. So my message to the establishment today is do not underestimate us, do not underestimate the power of our organisations, do not underestimate the power of our solidarity, and do not underestimate the power of united public outcry. Solidarity, everyone.
Thank you, Carol. Carol's one of those few people without whom this protest wouldn't have occurred today. And it's absolutely right that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. There's lots we can learn from history to give us strength, because we know that we can defeat this bill. Now, I suspect because of the weather, people are feeling a little bit chilly. You could do with warming up, which is really, it's really good that we've now got something to warm you up a little bit. We've got a band, some live music. I'm told they're gypsy jazz. I'm not entirely sure what gypsy jazz is. I've got a band I like to follow that calls themselves Bourbon Soak Gypsy Blues Bop and Stroll. So there's lots of different types of music out there. But gypsy jazz sounds good to me. So Lackadaisy with a bit of gypsy jazz.
cracking.
Yeah, they're both plugged in.
Yeah, cool.
Hey everybody, good to see you. We're most of a band called Lackadaisy. It's really good to see a lot of masks and social distancing going on because a member of our band has got long COVID at the moment and can't be here today. But we're going to do what we can with what we've got. We're really happy to be playing on this beautiful day. Actually, every time we've played in this area, it has rained. So we're really sorry about that. It's probably us, not you. But we're just going to kick it off. We're actually not going to play a gypsy jazz song to start off with, but this one seemed pretty appropriate. We're going to sound check as we go, so bear with us. But solo voy con mi pena, sola va mi condena. Correré mi destino para burlar la ley, perdido en el corazón de la grande Babilón. Me dicen el clandestino por no llevar papel. Pa' una ciudad del norte yo me fui a trabajar. Mi vida la dejé entre Ceuta y Gibraltar. Soy una raya en el mar, fantasma en la ciudad. Mi vida va prohibida, dice la autoridad. Solo voy con mi pena, sola va mi condena. Correr mi destino por no llevar papel, perdido en el corazón de la grande Babilón. Me dicen el clandestino, yo soy el quiebrale, mano negra, clandestina, argelino, clandestino, colombiano, clandestino, marihuana ilegal. Un, dos, tres. Solo voy con mi pena, sola va mi condena. Correré mi destino para burlar la ley, perdido en el corazón de la grande Babilón. Me dicen el clandestino, yo soy el quiebrale, mano negra, clandestina, colombiano, andesino, siriano, clandestino, marihuana ilegal. Gracias, gracias. We're not all going to be playing in English because we refuse to sing in the language of the gammon for every song, but this one is going to be in English. This is something that we haven't got very much of, but we've got a lot of something, so we're going to give it a go. It goes something like this.
Which one? Okay, cool.
1, 2, 'Well, I can't give you anything but love, baby. That's the only thing I've plenty of. Lately, dream a while, scheme a while, and you're sure to find happiness, and I guess all those things you've always dreamed of. Gee, I'd like to see you looking swell, baby, with diamond rings that Woolworths doesn't sell. Until that lucky day, you know darn well, baby, that I can't give you anything but love. I said I can't give you anything but love, baby, that's the only thing I've plenty of lately. Dream a while, scheme a while, you're sure to find happiness, and I guess all those things you've always dreamed of. Gee, I'd like to see you looking swell, baby, with diamond rings that Woolworths doesn't sell. Until that lucky day, you know darn well, baby, that I can't give you anything. I can't give you anything. I can't give you anything but love. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. The ordeal is over for now, but we'll be later. We'll be back for a couple more. We're just trying to decide what languages to sing them in. But until then, have a brilliant time. Enjoy the beautiful weather. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Well, I loved that. That was really good. You saw I came out of the tent for a little bit there to stand in solidarity with you in the rain. And I have to say, you're all wonderful people for sticking around to protest in the rain. We will be hearing some more from Lackadaisy in a little bit. So I hope the weather eases up and people stick around. There are some of us here on this protest who would already be in prison if this law was in place. I'm now going to introduce to you a local activist, an environmental activist, who's going to say a little bit about herself and her convictions. Evie Sear.
Which one should I go to? Hello? Hiya. Is that right? Can you hear me? Right. Having been involved in the environment movement for the past 35 years, I do my best to reduce my environmental impact. We've got solar panels on our roof, an allotment, use a renewable energy supplier, minimise unnecessary travel, avoid plastic, shop as ethically as possible, and I've been vegan for 25 years. However, individual action, although very important, is not enough. Sharing posts on social media about what can be done feels futile, although social media does have its place to share ideas, campaigns, events and activities. We need to get out there and get things changed. I've been on first name terms with all my MPs since I've been old enough to vote, and I've campaigned, gone on marches and protested since I was 17, but this is still not enough. We're in a climate emergency and need to get the people and organisations causing the destruction to stop. And the government needs to bring in laws to mitigate climate change. I've done many peaceful actions over the years, mostly with Greenpeace, and have been arrested a couple of times. The second time, I spent 10 hours in police custody. The first time I got conditional discharge, and the second time a fine, so now I've got a criminal record. But if this bill goes through, myself and my colleagues could have faced a 10-year prison sentence. This will act as a massive deterrent to people standing up against any injustice. Breaking the law does not come easy to me, and it is certainly not nice being arrested. But when all other options have been explored, environmental criminals have to be exposed and made to listen. Peaceful civil disobedience is a pillar of a functioning democracy, and with this bill, the government are slowly chipping away at it. People often say to me, haven't you got anything else better to do? Well, actually I have. I love walking, working on my allotment, going to gigs, meeting friends, reading, painting and many other things. But how can any of us just carry on as normal when, to quote Greta, our house is on fire? There is no planet B, and this new bill will make anything we do as activists much more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie. And if this bill had been in place a few months ago, we'd now be campaigning to try to get Evie out of prison. So thanks for bearing with us in the rain. We're going to try to plough on. The BBC weather forecast said that it would only be showers and it wouldn't start raining until 3 o'clock. Consequently, the risk assessment, I said it would be fair weather. So I hope I don't get put in a slammer for getting the risk assessment wrong. Our next speaker is going to talk to us about the National Health Service and the threat to the NHS. We've got poets and music to come as well. But I'm going to introduce a local NHS campaigner, Lucette Davies.
Hello. First of all, can I be a bit pedantic? Can people return the placards over to that side, because we're going to be trying to get them in the car and take them home soon. My name's Lucette Davies, and I'm an activist with East Sussex Save the NHS. I'm here today because I truly believe the future of our NHS depends on our right to protest and organise and get out on the streets. I've spent the last few weeks canvassing for county council elections. It's actually been overwhelming to hear some of the tragic stories, and the people have really been dealt such a cruel blow by this government. The political parties have either contributed to these awful situations or failed to prevent them arising. I'm therefore left feeling that it will only be through ordinary people taking to the streets that we can fight back and build a country that cares for its society. As an NHS campaign, it can feel like we're struggling to just hold open the coffin of the NHS while the government looms over us with a hammer ready to push in the final nail. Our NHS is in a very precarious situation and desperately needs ordinary people to rise up and fight those in power who seek to destroy it. This year, we're going to see the introduction of another major top-down reorganisation of the NHS. The only motive for this is to satisfy the greedy, profit-driven private corporations who are dissatisfied with the amount of money they're making out of our health service. So we have a government who is planning a reorganisation that follows exactly the same path the Americans went down when faced by corporations who wanted more profit. The Americans have the most expensive and inefficient healthcare system in the world, and more Americans go bankrupt for healthcare costs than anywhere else. We couldn't have chosen a worse system to copy. We all need our NHS, even those who have private healthcare insurance. Our society will fall to pieces if only some of us have healthcare, access to healthcare. We cannot see ourselves as isolated bodies who are unaffected by everyone else. And that is the beauty of the NHS. It treats individuals but cares for our entire society as it does so. We are fighting against those in power, and it seems inevitable they will therefore find us a nuisance. We want to be a nuisance. For those who are dismantling the NHS, it is the only way to stop them just ignoring us. There is no way we can allow anyone who is fighting for this society to be in prison. We must stop this bill in its tracks. Please, don't go home today and feel you've done your bit. Be proud you stood in the rain on a Saturday to fight against this draconian piece of legislation. but recognise that this corrupt and authoritarian government is not going to give up on this one without a fight. We all need to maintain the momentum we've built today and keep up the pressure until we win. Please, fight like your lives depends on it, because quite frankly, they do.
Is there a Steve Jansen around to come for? Excellent. So, you've been described as a crow poet, crowman, yeah, who delivers poetry about things like leprechauns and stuff. But today, you're going to do something slightly different. Yeah. So, we're in for a real treat, a bit of poetry from the crowman.
Hiya, guys. As he said, I normally write about leprechauns and fairies and things, but I also write about things that really mean a lot to me, and that's why we're all here today. So I hope you like these few words. I'm a poor old hippie, and I've lived through all these years, but the situation nowadays is bringing me to tears. This government is trying to take away our basic rights. They're slamming all the doors shut and turning out the lights. Our children will be growing up in a sterile fascist state. It's our duty to protect them before it gets too late. How can we leave them in a world in which they have no say? A world of sad tomorrows, corruption and decay. This government is wielding Mrs. Thatcher's sharpened axe, muzzling us like dogs and hiding all the facts. What's happening to this nation? They couldn't do this in France. People stand together, they're united in their stance. We can't let these bullies silence us, or everything is lost, and the children of tomorrow will have to count the cost. Kill the bill.
Thank you, Steve. That was brilliant. Is there a Louise Walton? Oh, yeah. So we're rushing through to try to get us out of the rain, and you see that my protesting puppy has joined me. So Louise Walton now is going to deliver a statement. Louise Walton, don't know who she is. She's going to deliver a statement about the Gypsy Traveller and Roma community.
Thank you. I'm from Eastbourne Stand Up to Racism, one of the founder members. So do join us, look us up on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, sorry guys. Whenever the travelling community settle anywhere, the racists come out of the woodwork. A survey conducted by the Traveller Movement found that 91% of travellers have faced discrimination, and over 70% hate speech or a hate crime. Over 50% have been refused services because of ethnicity, as recently seen by Haven Holiday Park in Camber Sands. Shame on them. There are not enough authorised areas for travellers to stop in, forcing them to stop over in unauthorised areas. Yet the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, that bill, gives police power to confiscate vehicles, which is their homes, in such circumstances. This effectively criminalises the Gypsy, Roma and travelling communities. And we in Eastbourne stand up to racism and say, travellers are welcome here. Yay! The Roma, Gypsy, traveller population, all welcome here. I have a statement from Friends, Families and Travellers, I'll be quick, which is a leading national charity that works on behalf of all Gypsy, Roma travellers, regardless of ethnicity, culture or background. They say the criminalisation of trespass and the draconian police powers this will come with are a direct and indiscriminate attack on a traditional way of life that has lasted for centuries. This legislation is a direct assault on Gypsy and traveller communities who already must deal with eviction after eviction, year upon year. Make no mistake, this bill entrenches the hostile environment for nomadic communities. As well as the assault on age-old cultural traditions, these proposals fail to address the fundamental issue of lack of site provision. There is a national shortage of pitchers, but rather than adopting a humane approach to travellers' accommodation needs, the government are choosing to criminalise families. And where are these people supposed to go? There are mountains of evidence showing the poor health outcomes that gypsies and travellers experience, such as having a life expectancy of 10 to 25 years lower than the general population. These proposals are only going to exacerbate these grim facts. The criminalisation of trespass and the increasing of police powers will force individuals and families into the criminal justice system and face having their home and all their possessions seized, which may be the cruelest of all the measures in the bill. This bill will allow for the proposals to be wide open to interpretation and will likely impact everyone who wishes to live roadside by culture, choice or necessity. Everyone needs a place to live. It should not be a crime to have nowhere to go. Say again, Eastbourne, what's left of you here, well done for staying. But if you had to be out in the rain, if you were evicted, you wouldn't want, this bill is what it would do to the travelling community. And so say it again, Eastbourne, gypsies and travellers are welcome here. Kill this bill.
Thank you, Louise. Well, looked at the BBC weather forecast, as I said. It would teach me to trust anything the BBC says these days. Have we got Andrew Durling? Andrew Durling, Friends of the Earth, campaigner and beekeeper.
Hello there, everybody. I won't say too much in this weather, but I just want to say that Friends of the Earth is utterly opposed to this bill, this police crime sentencing in courts bill. It is utterly anti-democratic, and it's a threat to peaceful protest. Friends of the Earth is a national charity. It's not allowed to break the law. It's not allowed to engage even in non-violent direct action. It can only engage in peaceful protest. But this bill will kill off peaceful protest. It will become impossible to engage in organise a climate march without risking the arrest of demonstrators. And that's something Friends of the Earth simply cannot stand for. Because it's people power, it's the climate marches that have made a difference. I don't need to tell you that we face the threat of an existential threat from climate change. Eastbourne itself is in the front line of climate change, facing the rising seas and storm surges of a rapidly warming world. Half of Eastbourne will go underwater if the sea defences are breached. So we know down here the very real risks of climate change. And the only way to get that point across to the politicians is people power, putting bodies on the street and making a lot of noise. I've been on quite a few climate protests. I stood with the demonstrators at Balcombe. Remember Balcombe? Remember all the protests against fracking? We stopped fracking in this country, but we only stopped it. We only stopped fracking in this country by being disrupted, by being noisy, by turning out in our thousands. We stood outside the gates of the fracking the drilling site at Balcombe, and I stood in the middle of the road outside the gates. If this bill gets passed, I would be arrested and possibly face a prison sentence just for standing in the road peacefully. So, I mean, I spoke to my mum briefly this morning, and I happened to mention that I was coming to this May Day rally, and she said, "Oh, please don't get arrested, please." And she always says that. If she knows I'm going on a march, she's always scared that I'm going to get arrested. Normally I say, not a problem, it's only a peaceful protest, it's not a problem, I won't get arrested. But I had to say to her honestly this morning, well, I probably won't get arrested today, but if the bill gets passed, I may well get arrested. Silence on the phone, and that's the chilling thing. It sends a chill down my spine to have to say to my own mother, I might get arrested if this bill gets passed, even though I have no intention of getting arrested. I might just get arrested without warning. Any of us might get arrested without warning. That's the reality of this bill, and this bill must not pass. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. You're all wonderful people for sticking with us. Can Gina Bungo...